Hello everyone, you are watching The Lineup. I'm Joshua Adams. Sitting across from me is Jeffrey Matthews. A full show today as it was an eventful weekend for both Austin Peay baseball and softball. More Tebow news as he starts the year in AA. Shohei Ohtani proves us wrong with a great start to the year. Then umpires have had some quick triggers again this season and there doesn't seem to be any repercussions. And then finally, on Greenlight, we overreact to the first few games of the season. Jeff has the latest with softball.
Softball has improved to 24-11. Compare this to last year's 17-31. Some might say this year has already been a success. Last game against UT Martin Skyhawks, Morgan Rackle had a game, dinging out a homer, pulling in 4 RBIs. The team had totals of 13 hits and 10 RBIs. The Skyhawks just couldn't keep up. Only having 6 hits for the team, they were only able to bring in 2. Austin Peay won 11-2. Austin Peay plays again today at 4 p.m. against Middle Tennessee. The Blue Raiders won their last game against Belmont, but hopefully the Lady Govs can come out and get a win.
Over the weekend, the Governors headed to Nashville to face the Belmont Bruins. Brett Newberg was the big story of Friday's 10-6 victory for the Govs, making only his 3rd start of the year. The junior hit 3 home runs before coming in to close out the game with an inning and 2/3 of no-hit ball. Saturday, the Govs won 5-2 on the back of 7 strong innings from Jacques Pouchot. On Sunday, the Governors couldn't contain the Bruins' offense, losing 4-0. Yesterday, the Govs were still in Nashville for a single game against Lipscomb, losing 6-8 as the bullpen allowed 8 runs in 5 innings of relief. And tonight, the Govs head over to Murray State for that series. So despite relatively mediocre results, Tim Tebow is moving up the minor league ladder. He started his year in AA, where people believe pitching begins to become the real deal. So of course, he hits a home run on the very first pitch, right there. It's at this point you're like, what can't he do? Pretty much. I mean, you just expect this to happen. He'll come up to the major leagues and just hit this massive home run, and everyone will go, okay, this is the state of baseball now.
But this isn't the first time he's done it either. He did it not only for AA, but also when he first went into the minors. The very first pitch he ever saw was a home run.
Yeah, twice. He's done that twice, and you can't say that for many people, but he's a publicity stunt. We've discussed this.
Yes,
He's a publicity stunt, and his stats are evident of that. I think he's batting like .220 or something, or batted .220 last year. Jose Bautista has expressed interest in joining a team with a desire to win a championship, but a team with a desire to win a championship will have no interest in him. He batted .203 with an OPS plus of 73 with negative value on defense and as a player altogether. Jose, just call it quits. You're best known for being punched in the face. Here on the lineup, we were somewhat skeptical of Shohei Ohtani, so of course he had a stellar debut, striking out 6 on 3 hits over 6 innings of work. Then, of course, he hit massive home runs in 3 consecutive ball games. Naturally, he followed that up with this.
Now the 2-2. Down goes Davis, just blew. Now the 0-2. Swing and a miss. 2 outs. The pitch. Swing and a miss. Fastball pulled through the left side. A sharp single by Marcus Semien, and there's the first base runner of the game for the Oakland A's.
If it wasn't clear from the video, he took a perfect game into the 7th inning, struck out 12, allowing only 1 hit and walking 1 batter. He is the first player ever to hit a home run in 3 consecutive games and strike out 12 in a single season. And he won Player of the Week honors, and it's his 2nd start in the major leagues. After all those spring training troubles, it was pretty much the consensus that he needed to start in the minor leagues. All that being said, I think we were wrong about Shohei Ohtani.
We definitely were. He has come out and he's been a strong player for the Angels, and he's been a strong player that I know I didn't expect him, making that transition from Japan all the way over to the majors. was huge, and I expected him, I don't want to say completely fail, but I also did not expect him to put up the numbers that he's been putting up.
Yeah, he has hit, he's 7 for 18, again, small sample size. He's only had 2 starts and 18 at-bats, but 7 for 18, 3 home runs, and 7 RBIs. And he seemed, I mean, apart from that, he seems like a genuinely good guy.
Yeah.
Like, he was splashed with the Gatorade cooler. I can't remember what the context was, but he was splashed with the Gatorade cooler, and he was just very confused about it. But he took it really well once he figured out that it was, oh, they're telling me, like, I'm a part of the team. This is my family. And it was just a really good thing to see.
Definitely. And those consecutive home runs is what I found, like, crazy. Like, for one, getting 1 home run against a team is one thing. Like, that's awesome, right? But then to go back to back to back in games and hit a dinger over the wall. And they weren't small home runs.
No, they weren't.
They were like over the fence
They were crushed.
and then some.
And they were hit over 100 miles an hour. It's I'm a fan, honestly. I'm a big fan of this guy, and he took so much less money to come to the major leagues because he just wanted to play. If he would have waited, I think 3 years maybe, he would have gotten millions and millions of dollars. But he just wanted to play baseball at the highest level possible. So he came, and he's making league minimum, which it doesn't mean he's on the streets or anything. He's making, I think, $530,000, I think, so the poor soul. But, I mean, it's just, he seems like a great guy, and you just can't help but cheer for him.
Exactly, and I'm super happy for him. Like, talking about transferring over to the major leagues from Japan, and then I'm excited to watch him grow in this league, putting up the numbers that he has. Like right now, I'm really interested to see where those numbers are going to be in about 2 years, maybe 3.
He's only 23. He'll turn 24 in the middle of the season, but 23, 24, that's still a prospect, and he's competing with the best of them, and he could be one of the most valuable players in baseball this year. I mean, because he pitches, well, he throws 100 miles an hour. He's basically just a 2-pitch pitcher, fastball and slider, but splitter. But they're amazing pitches. I mean, you saw on the video that he's striking out people left and right. He's struck out 18 people in 13 innings pitched, which that comes out to a lot.
A lot.
That comes out to a lot of strikeouts. So, I mean,
you can't. Yeah. So in the majors, you're getting thrown heat. If you're getting thrown a fastball, you're getting 95 to about 98 on average, I would say.
Yeah, the average fastball is about 93.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to have Ohtani come out here and he's throwing hundreds.
And accurately.
Yeah. And consistently. It's astonishing, and I feel like a lot of people weren't expecting that powerful of Ohtani just coming in here and being like, all right, well, I'm here. So
and it's in the major leagues, players can hit 100 miles an hour. It's not that proprietary anymore. That's why Aroldis Chapman isn't the most valuable reliever in baseball now. There's different arguments for who is, but that's beside the point. You have to be able to dot the corners with 100 miles an hour. And if you look at him, I mean, I think he's 6'4", and he weighs like 190 pounds. So he's not just bulk and just firing in it like a cannon. I mean, he has to do the slingshot, that people do with Chris Sale. I mean, he's tall and weighs 120 pounds. I mean, he slings it, and it's the same with Shohei Ohtani. He just looks like a baseball player.
He really does.
It's just, I love the guy. Honestly, I do. I mean, there's not much more to say about it. I mean, he's a great player, and he seems like a great guy, and he celebrates with the team, and it's just, and his translators right there with him. It's just.
Ladies and gentlemen, Josh has officially gone from the Cubs to the Angels.
A little bit. I have. Okay. Yadier Molina shoved an umpire. We break down why that only equals a 1-game suspension next.
0-1, hit high and deep.
Back of the end zone. Brown got it. Moore drives inside. Put it up. See this one. Swung and missed it.
Now Smith again. Block. Point Tech.
Nice turnaround by Johnson.
Near post. Kick in.
Any place, anytime. Find it here. The OVC Digital Network.
How will you lead to a better future? Will you lead through life-changing innovations? Or will your leadership shine through the quality of your work? Success is defined by the individual. So it's time to think about the person you want to be and where you will learn to lead through excellence. It's time to become a governor at Austin Peay.
Welcome back to the lineup. I am Joshua Adams. He is Jeffrey Matthews. Yadier Molina shoved an umpire into Diamondbacks manager Torey Lovullo. I'm trying. After Lovullo came out to complain about the strike zone. I mean, we'll talk about Molina first, and then we'll get to the umpires. He was only suspended one game, and he appealed the suspension, was able to play last night. We don't have the rights to the highlight, or otherwise we would show it. There was a few low strikes called during the game. I mean, it seemed like it, and objectively there were strike zones. You know, there are strike zone websites that they have sensors and stuff. There was some pretty low strikes, and it was only the second inning. Two Diamondbacks players had struck out on pitches decently below the zone. The Diamondbacks manager, Torey Lovullo, came out to defend his players. He gestured at the plate, and Lovullo was ejected immediately because managers can't argue balls and strikes. Molina took offense to what Lovullo said and tried to get in his face. The umpire held him back pretty successfully. So Molina shoved the umpire into Lovullo when he couldn't get to him, and Molina was not ejected. And the umpire said, the whole plate umpire, Tim Timmons, said he didn't intentionally bump him. It was just incidental. That was nothing. And you've seen the video.
I have.
It wasn't incidental. He shoved him. He straight shoved him.
He did, very much so, also, I'll add. However, you could also come back and say that the Diamondbacks manager initiated it. Mm-hmm. He came out and kind of taunted, maybe not purposefully taunted Molina, but yet he did, and tried to get him to get a reaction, in my opinion. And I think that's a possible reason as to why the ump did not throw out Molina with that reaction.
From what I could tell, he had said some bad words. You could tell that.
Absolutely.
From what it seemed like is that the manager was pointing at Molina, and he said, "This big word, you're letting this big word call the game," and Molina took offense to that. Molina said, "He called me a big word twice, and you can't allow that. I hope the MLB finds this guy." The umpire said his was a natural reaction, and it is a natural reaction, but your brain shuts down for a half second whenever you get that upset. You can't just say, "Oh, he's fine," because it was natural.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of natural things that you shouldn't act on, especially with anger. It's allowing people to do something that they shouldn't, and these guys, they're examples to kids. Kids look up to these guys, and they're saying, "Hey, it's okay to shove another person into another person if they call you a bad name."
Exactly. One thing to understand is these umps, let's start at the beginning. One, they don't have the technology that we have that we can see on the television at home. All they see is where that ball is, and to them, that might be a strike. It's part of the game. That is a part of baseball. There's no getting around that. Diamondback manager should not have came out of the dugout. He knew that, because that's a rule.
Yeah.
And Molina, it's hard because I understand his frustration, especially when someone calls you a name that should not be said. That's hard, and you will have a reaction to that. But there is a split second where there needs to be a line that is drawn. I think it needs to be a very clear line with the MLB. However, I think he should have gotten more than one game. That's my final decision.
The manager or Molina?
Molina. I think end all is that you don't push umpires. One, okay?
Yeah.
Your own players, whatever. Your own coach, whatever. Anybody on the opposing team or an umpire, If you lay your hands on them, I think it should be a minimum 3 game.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, because it actually tells them you're missing this series. You're not taking part in this. You have hurt your team. And there have been people that have argued, well, you can't punish the team because a player does this if it's like the best player, because there have been, I don't know if it was baseball, but instances where the best player didn't get suspended as much as he should have because it would have hurt the team.
Right.
And you do need to hurt the team. That's the point.
Yes.
If people don't have punishments, they'll keep doing it.
Exactly.
And
you brought up an excellent point. Like, these people are examples for children that are playing the game. That
Not
love
even
the
children.
game.
I mean, people in
Exactly.
general look up to them.
Me, I look up to a lot of these people, and to see, like, to watch someone, you know, especially if you're a huge fan of them, and to see them. I remember one time I watched Chipper Jones get thrown out of a game, and I vividly remember him screaming not a good word at somebody, and then he was immediately thrown out.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh man, why did he do that? I was more upset with Chipper Jones than someone throwing him out. And that's a big, huge thing. Like, if you're going to be an example for anybody in the baseball community, own up to that, and then make yourself known and be an advocate for respecting the game and respecting the umpires.
It's just not about that. It's about respecting each other and respecting yourself to not act that way. But Wilson Contreras, the catcher for the Cubs, he in a game against the Brewers a little bit ago, he hit a triple, and then when he got to third, you could very clearly see him saying something you, something you, something you to someone in the dugout. He's a pretty much a known kind of, I'll call him passionate player at this point, but you just can't do that. I mean, if I were the coach of a team, I would first off, you sit him down and say, you can't do this.
Yeah.
I mean, you're representing the team, not just yourself, and I mean the MLB as a whole a little bit. And if they do it again, you just say, all right, you're sitting out a couple of games, bud.
Yeah. And that might not even be like the MLB's decision. Like, I think that should be another, like, a coach's decision. And I think that's kind of what you were getting at, is have a coach get out there, and if the MLB doesn't do anything, then I think the coach should. Because I think, like you were talking about representing, you represent the team, you represent the organization, and you represent the sport of baseball. And I think I've made this analogy before, but if I own a business and you do something and it does not represent me as a CEO or whatever, president, well then I'm either going to suspend you or I'm going to fire you. And those are the two options. And little stuff, I do consider this kind of like little stuff just because it happens so often in baseball. But I think it's just, I don't really know. It's so frustrating to see when this stuff happens.
Well, see, I feel like people are more sensitive to it in baseball because, as a whole, baseball is a more respectful sport. If you get what I'm saying, than football or basketball. In football and basketball, it's just a part of the game. There's room for that kind of stuff. But in baseball, you know, the unwritten rules that we've talked about, they don't accept that. And I actually wanted to talk about another ejection that I completely disagreed with, where Anthony Rendon, the third baseman for the Washington Nationals, was ejected. Again, we don't have the rights to the footage. We would show it if we could. From a neutral point of view, I'm not a fan of the Nationals, or honestly, I can't remember what team they were facing. Rendon flipped the bat because he was upset at the strikeout because he struck out looking. He didn't look at the umpire. He didn't say anything. They had a shot of him from the side. He just flipped his bat, flipped his helmet off, and was taking off his gloves facing away from the umpire. The umpire was back here, and the umpire threw him out, just right then and there. And
Like, threw him out of the game.
Yeah, he threw him out of the game. And you could see him, he just turned to him and he was like, okay.
Like, why?
And Rendon is usually fairly quiet in the media, but he was kind of upset after that, understandably. He said, I was just as surprised as y'all were. I'm pretty sure y'all saw the replay. I don't think my mouth even opened to chew the gum. So it's pretty funny. It's comical, to say the least. So obviously he doesn't agree with that ejection.
And how could you?
Yeah.
You see, here's my thing, because you see a lot of players do the whole bat flip thing, like even when they're angry, or they'll flip the hat or the helmet or whatever. I think if you're allowed to do a bat flip when you hit a home run, in celebration. I think flipping a bat, as much as he did, now if you just chuck it across the field, that's a bigger problem. But if you just flip the bat, I'm not sure that's too big of a deal. But then if you take it back down to, when you're starting to learn baseball, you get told if you throw the bat, you're out.
Yeah.
I remember getting that rule all the time. And this is kind of an example of that happening, except on a much bigger stage. It's the MLB. But I don't know. I don't agree with that. I think that's a very, very, very minor thing to do.
It is.
And people get frustrated playing baseball. Of course they're going to have a reaction.
Yeah, the best players in baseball get out 70% of the time, and you're considered an all-star and possibly an all-time great if you can maintain that average.
Yeah.
Joe West, the crew chief of that umpiring crew, he's possibly the most famous umpire in baseball for various reasons. He explained when the home plate umpire called strike 3, Rendon threw the bat, and he said, "You have some options here." Marty, the home plate umpire, felt that what he did was showing him up worse than an equipment violation would have been. That's a whole other thing. And that's why he ejected him. You have to do something or he loses all respect from the players. I completely disagree. I think being that sensitive and having that thin of skin makes you lose the respect of the players, because Rendon wasn't showing up the umpire. You can get upset, you can think the call was bad, and you can flip the bat, flip your helmet, whatever, without it being directed at the umpire. You can be upset that you struck out. You can be upset that something happened, and it not be, oh man, this umpire stinks.
Right. And there's, looking back on watching baseball, there's not a whole lot of times that I've watched games and I've watched people get thrown out, and I can't find a reason like they shouldn't have been thrown out. I can usually see it, right? There's only been one time that I truly never saw what happened, like how it could have been, how the player could have been thrown out, and that was way back. I don't remember the year, but it was Tom Glavine was pitching, and he was on the mound, and he threw a strike. To my eyes, it looked like a strike, but I'm not going to get into that debate. And then he caught the ball. The catcher threw the ball back. Tom Glavine grabbed it, turned around, threw the ball in the glove, and then the umpire said something to Tom, and Tom went, "I didn't say anything."
I remember that.
And then the umpire threw him. Yeah. And then Bobby Cox come waddling out of the dugout, and then Bobby Cox was gone.
He gets ejected for existing.
Exactly. Well, we saw Snitker for the Braves is on track to beat him. He was ejected for the first 2 games, actually.
The first
2 games of the Atlanta Braves this season.
There was an instance where John Lester, he's known for mumbling to himself, yelling at himself on the mound. Again, words that should not be said on television. And he was getting upset at himself. He walked, he turned around and started yelling obscenities. And the umpire actually went after him. David Ross, who was the catcher at the time, had to hold him back because the umpire thought he was talking to him, saying like, I disagree with this, but he's just upset at himself whenever things don't go as he planned. And just umpires, you're a professional at being around alpha males.
Yeah.
This isn't what you're paid to do. I mean, Bryce Harper a few years ago said 43,000 people don't pay to see the umpire after he got ejected. So it's a thing in its own. You're watching The Lineup. When we come back, we overreact to the first 11 games of the season.
We are more than just athletes. We inspire scholars. We inspire leaders. We inspire champions. We inspire family. This is the Ohio Valley Conference.
Each team has at least 9 games under their belt, some as many as 13. With a 162-game season, it means this is an extremely small sample size. Common wisdom says teams will stabilize to their actual talent level within the next month or so. All of that being said, let's overreact to the first couple of weeks in the 27-week season.
With the team winning only 3 of their first 11 games, Derek Jeter should come out of retirement and start at shortstop for the Marlins. It wouldn't be the first time he moved a better shortstop out of position.
In an attempt to win one last time with an aging core, the Giants added Andrew McCutchen and Evan Longoria. These would be power signings if it were 2012. With more than half of their starting staff on the disabled list and Joe Panik one of the highest achieving members of the offense, the team is destined for mediocrity. Try again 6 years ago.
The Braves have scored the 3rd most runs in baseball because that matters. Atlanta Braves, 2020 World Series champions.
San Diego Padres, 2020 World Series champions.
The Pirates are the best team in the National League Central. The front office went the right direction, trading the deadweight of Andrew McCutchen and Garrett Cole to only add Corey Dickerson.
Shohei Ohtani is the real deal. He will continue his current pace and hit 80 home runs and 250 at-bats. The Angels will knock the Astros off the top position in the American League West and cruise to a World Series victory as Trout and Ohtani win the MVP award together unanimously.
No one is going to win the American League Central.
The Brewers will commit over 200 errors this season and still make the wild card.
Off to their best start of all time, the Red Sox will cruise to a 120-win season. David Price will win his 2nd Cy Young Award as he becomes the first pitcher ever to shut out opposing teams for the entirety of the season.
With the Cubs under 500 and Happ not working out at the top of the order, Joe Madden should bat the pitcher first to spare the fans from having any hope the leadoff hitter will actually get on base.
The Nationals have started off poorly, but will surge to win the East on the back of a career season from Bryce Harper, despite the fact that they employ Miguel Montero.
The Mariners have more injuries this year than games played. I don't have anything to add to that. It's just sad.
At 4-6, the Dodgers season is over.
The Cardinals have called up Harrison Bader. No doubt he will be the best player on the Cardinals for 2 months before vanishing into obscurity. Do you remember Jeremy Hazelbaker? Me neither.
The Mets are off to their best start in team history. The pitching won't get injured, and the Mets training staff will win Comeback Player of the Year.
Okay.
But on a more serious note, we've had a great season so far. The MLB.
Yeah, it's been an amazing start to the season. That was the best opening day in years.
Opening day was wild.
It was spectacular. The Cubs had a 17-game season.
Wow.
A 17-game season. A 17-inning game, the second game. And they had the best starting pitching performance of that day with a reliever in Eddie Butler, who went like 7 innings and struck out a bunch and didn't walk that many and only allowed 1 run after he'd come out. So
Nick Markakis for the Atlanta Braves hit a walk-off home run the very first game.
Yeah,
which was wild in its own, but yet to do it on the very first day, and especially a lot of Braves players were having trouble in spring training, and then just to come in opening day and be like, all right, let's start playing. And then the Braves have continued to have a great season. I will say that it's not enough to hold a World Series championship in 2020 possibly, but I will say that they have done a phenomenal job this year.
Yeah, they have. I mean, we said it jokingly, but they have a good chance of winning the 2020 World Series. They have the prospects, and in general, when you load up on prospects, it's about 3 or so years.
Right.
And that's roughly the timeline that we're at.
Right.
So.
And then in a couple of days, about April 13th, we should see Acuna come up, and even that could add a whole lot to the Atlanta Braves, even though I don't think they need much more. But adding the additional Acuna to the roster would be huge.
Yeah, and they did what the Cubs did to Bryant, where they held him down for service time, which that's a whole other argument. Thank you for tuning in to The Lineup. For Jeffrey Matthews, I am Joshua Adams. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you would like to see more of that pretty face. Thank you for tuning in to The Lineup, and see you next week.